I read the para, now, but since I'm going to read each sentence, we better get the context. Okay, so it's because 1 week. So I'll read out the summary of what in the previous para. Okay, then we'll start. This is the fifth para of the chapter. We are now going to look at various views of what reality is. That's what he has said in the previous one. We're looking at all the different conceptions of reality. So, one theory based on the spiritual experience of the self, the Brahman, Nirvana. Okay, that is that there is a self-existence which is the only reality. The self-existence. It exists by itself. Nobody has created it, and it's an existence. Now, existence, I told you, you can think of it as a substance. Okay? There's a substance which is subtle and infinite, and it is conscious of itself. That's the funny part. In the world, the stones don't seem to be conscious. There is consciousness hidden in it. You come to know later on. But when you see these things, you don't see consciousness. But there's a gradation. No? Even trees are conscious in a way. They are growing and they respond to the environment. If you touch them, they sometimes withdraw. So consciousness is there, but it is visible in plants and in small animals, but it is not visible in a stone. But it is there hiding. Okay? Remember the gradation. So the first theory is that there is a self-existence which is the only reality. Okay? It can be reached, experienced by the consciousness rising into the silent, immutable, infinite featurelessness of the self. Okay? It's a relationless absolute. It's a substance which is absolutely infinite, eternal, and static, and it is conscious of itself. When in that consciousness, we can see the world as an illusion. Okay? In that consciousness is so real that the world is an illusion, an unreality. This is what happens when you silence your mind and go into the level 2 of the spiritual planes of consciousness. This is what happens. We can then get rid of our personality in the world. The ego disappears, the body, mind, life. Remember, personality is not your soul. The personality is your body, your vital and your mind, which has been created in nature, and also your ego. Your ego is created in nature, and when you go to level 2, this silent witness self, these things can be completely ignored. You can get away from them. You can get rid of our personality in the world. Ego disappears, body, life, and mind are seen as transient formations that break and dissolve into that from which they came. Body goes back into matter, vital goes back into universal prana, mentality goes to universal mind plane. Then we can then discover ourselves to be the real person, infinite consciousness, a portion of the Supreme. We also feel that we are coming from God and we are part of Him. Or that real person can be negated and we may merge into our original source and completely lose even our individual existence. So these are the possibilities. One, you see yourself as real and you have come from God and you are a part of God. But you are infinite, eternal, immortal. But the other one, which he is talking about, is that you can even dissolve your personality, even the experience of what you are having, that also can disappear. This is a Buddhistic theory. Okay, complete nirvana, effacement of not only body, mind, life, but also your soul and consciousness. The consciousness, your consciousness is a small knot of universal consciousness, and now that knot loses itself and becomes the universal consciousness. No more existence for the individual. Okay, so there is the first thing. The second theory, this is the first theory. The second theory is that there is a supreme reality which creates both being, which is static, infinite, eternal, featureless, as well as becoming. Becoming is the manifestation of finite forms in time and space. Or you can speak of it as spirit and matter, or God and the world. Okay, this is the second theory. There are two things. One is God, who is eternal, infinite, eternal. But this God can be impersonal also. That's why it is called being, just existing. Okay? Static, infinite, eternal, featureless. And the becoming. These are terms used in philosophy, being and becoming. Being is static, becoming is in movement, number one. Being is formless, becoming is form. Okay? Being is infinite, becoming is finite forms. So, being is in timelessness and spacelessness, beyond time and space, and becoming in the physical world, there is time and there is space. This is the second theory. Okay? And in eternal motion, the universe. Now, he comes back to the first theory. The first theory of the absolute, the sole reality, without features, necessarily sees the universe as an illusion, or at best, a lesser reality in time and space, whose very nature is evanescence, transience, not permanence at all, opposite of permanence, evanescence, transience. This is the Shankaran philosophy. It's not absolutely unreal, but it is semi-real, just like a shadow or the blue of the sky, as I said. There is no blue, but you see it as blue. It's semi-real, okay? Or the rainbow. These are usually the three examples which can give for semi-reality. Rainbow, you are seeing very clearly it is there, but when you go there, there is no reality. It's a reflection. It's small droplets of water which break up the light, the white light, into 7 colors. So there is nothing there. It's subtle. Or the blue sky, you see it as blue, but there is no blue there at all. You go there, no blue, no color, nothing at all. Okay, so. And the shadow, conditional reality. This is Shankaran philosophy. So, the first theory of the absolute, the sole reality, without feature, necessarily sees the universe as an illusion, or at best a lesser reality in time and space, whose very nature is evanescence, transience, phenomenon. Man has to disengage himself from the universe and individually from his body, vital and mind, and merge into the reality of the self. Atman, Brahman. These are all equivalent words. Self, Atman, Brahman. The second view of the absolute, which manifests both being and becoming, the universe is not unreal then, both being realities, is that it is utterly free, so free that it is not even bound by its own freedom. This is a second theory. It can bind and tie itself into limited, fixed, and contrary knots of its own nature of infinity, consciousness, power, and bliss. Its own nature of infinity, it can become finite. Its own nature of consciousness, it can become unconscious. Its own nature of infinite power, it can become powerless. And bliss also, it gets reduced and it can become the opposite of bliss. Therefore, consciousness becomes unconsciousness. Ananda can limit itself into pain and suffering. Shakti can diminish itself into weakness. And this is how the absolute creates the universe of finite and fleeting forms. And this absolute can be reached by supreme negation. Neti, neti, na iti, na iti. I am not the body, I am not the vital, I am not the mind. This you can reach by this method, the Jnana Yoga path. Or a supreme affirmation. Okay. You can go in the other way. That's Srimad prefers that. I am pure Brahman. Okay. Not the negative part, but I am pure Brahman. Why should I worry about all this? So you concentrate on the positive aspect. In this second view, the infinite featureless absolute is not a nihil. It's an infinite potentiality of all possibilities. It is featureless by itself. It has no features, no color, no form, no shape, nothing. But it contains everything in potential. Okay? This is something that the normal mind cannot grasp easily. But the image of the tree and the seed is relevant and helps the conception. This deploying of all possibilities is what we call the universe. This is what he has said in the previous paragraph. Now we read each sentence of the paragraph we have to read today. There is then, in the conception or the realization of the truth of the absolute, and the absolute is there in both the theories, okay, the first theory and the second theory. The absolute, no inherent inevitable consequence of a rejection or a dissolution of the truth of the universe. So, there is then, in the conception or the realization of the truth of the absolute, no inherent inevitable consequence of a rejection or a dissolution of the truth of the universe. He is denying the unreality of the physical world. You don't need to do that. In fact, no Upanishad says that the world is totally untrue. They don't say that. Okay? It's an interpretation of the Mayavada philosophy. The idea of an essentially unreal universe manifested somehow by an inexplicable power of illusion, the absolute Brahman, regarding it not or aloof, regarding it not, okay, or aloof and not affecting it, even as it is unaffected by it, is at bottom a carrying over, an imposing or imputation, adhyaropa, of an incapacity of our mental consciousness to that, so as to limit it. What he's saying, let's try and understand what he's saying. Okay. He's saying that nowhere in our scriptures does it is said clearly. In our scriptures, he's talking the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita. Okay. There is nowhere the idea that the world is absolutely unreal. That is a branch of the Buddhistic philosophy that came. Okay. So that is not, the interpretation of the scriptures is wrong, so he's saying. Okay. And why is it coming? He is also explaining why that theory came that the world is unreal. He is explaining why. Okay. And also let me explain the adhyaropa. Adhyaropa is a Sanskrit word which means the imposition of something on yourself. Okay. Suppose you have a person, a friend or an enemy whom you don't like, okay? You start seeing all sorts of things in him which maybe he doesn't even have, okay? You think of him as selfish. So this is an adhyaropa. You are imposing on him your own idea of what he is, but that's not true, okay? So this adhyaropa is the imposition of the idea of unreality on the physical world, which it is not. Okay? That's what he's explaining. The first theory. The world is unreal. Okay? So this is the adhyaropa. Adhyaropa is a word used in the Vedanta by Shankaracharya particularly. I read that sentence again. The idea of an essentially unreal universe. How is it coming? He explained. Manifested, it came into being. Manifested means it came into being somehow by an inexplicable power of illusion, the absolute Brahman regarding it not. Okay? That means to say, when you have the experience of the absolute Brahman, okay, or the self, you feel that you are not looking at the world at all. You are looking only at yourself, which is absolutely real, and the world doesn't seem to exist. So the whole idea is coming from there. Okay? It's a middle experience. It's not the ultimate experience. It's a middle experience, in the middle. Okay? Regarding it not or aloof and not affecting it, even as it is unaffected by it. In other words, the experience of the nirvana, you feel that you are unconnected with the universe, and the universe also is not throwing any of its emotions and thoughts on you. You are completely cut off from it. Okay? So this is the first thing that Shambhu is saying, but therefore you don't need to conclude that the world is unreal. Okay? Is at bottom a carrying over. Why is it coming? He is explaining. It's a carrying over, an imposing or imputation, adhyaropa, of an incapacity of our mental consciousness to that so as to limit it. Okay? So he explains in another place another thing. When you are in the physical world, I am explaining the what Shambhu is saying, adhyaropa. Why do we come to that conclusion? That's what we have to understand. Shambhu is saying that when you are in the physical world, you have dualities. You see opposites. So this habit of seeing opposites is carried over even when you are not in the physical world and in another world. Okay, I can put it another way to make it more graphic. Okay, an Indian has got Indian habits. Okay, he will do puja every day. When he goes to America, which is not India, he continues his habit. Okay, so this is exactly what's happening. When you are in the physical world, you are in one country and you are used to dualities. You are seeing opposites. Now when you go to the spiritual plane of consciousness, which is not the physical world, your old habit of seeing dualities continues. That's what Sadhguru is saying. Okay? That means to say you are carrying your old habit of seeing into the new condition that you are in. So the physical world becomes unreal. This is so real that that becomes unreal. Okay, so this is how you have to understand what Sadhguru is saying. Okay, it's a carrying over of old habits into a new territory. Okay, it's an incapacity of the mental consciousness to that, so as to limit it. Okay, our mental consciousness, when it passes beyond its limits, loses its own way and means of knowledge and tends towards inactivity or cessation. So when you are in the consciousness of the self, you are immutable. You are not acting at all. But your consciousness is not acting. But what about the body, mind, life? It is there and you are seeing. Okay. So I can tell you that the body, mind, life also then tends to go inactive. I told you, I had a very close friend, okay, and he had experience for 6 months. And he used to work with me in the press. But I find it difficult to drag him to the press. He would not be he would delay, go on delaying. Inactivity. Okay. So the immutability and the inactivity and just a witness regarding translates itself even into the body mind life. Okay, to a certain extent. But Sadhguru says that that's not good. You must continue to act normally. So I go back to the sentence now. Our mental consciousness, okay, your mental consciousness is level 1. Okay, when it passes beyond its limits, and what is that? When it goes to level 2, when you become Triguna-tita, you have gone beyond the body mind life. And what is meant by going beyond the body mind life? Your consciousness is now not identified with the body mind life. You are outside, and you see your body mind life as outside yourself. It's not, you are not inside, but you are outside. The body is now contained in your consciousness, outside. Okay. So our loses its own way and means of knowledge. And what are the means of knowledge for level 1? The senses. So now you are not using your senses anymore, because senses belong to the body, not to the consciousness. Our mental consciousness, when it passes beyond its limits, loses its own way. Now you can't think in the old way, but you continue to think because of habit and means of knowledge and tends towards inactivity or cessation. It loses at the same time or tends to have no further hold on its former contents. In other words, he is using very complicated words. He means now you have no control over your emotions, your actions and your thoughts. In fact, they go on automatically by themselves. You are not even concerned with them. Okay, this is what he's saying in this language. It loses. What is it? Your mind. It loses at the same time or tends to have no further hold on its former contents. The former contents are your body actions, vital emotions, and mental thoughts. You have got no control over them at all, no further hold, no continuing conception of the reality of that which once it was to all that was real. In the physical world, everything that we see around us is real. Now we have gone to the level 2 and now it becomes unreal. All those things become unreal. Okay? So he is explaining. We impute to absolute Parabrahman, conceived as non-manifest forever, a corresponding inability or separation or aloofness from what has become or seems now to us unreal. Seems as unreal. It must, like our mind in its cessation or self-extinction, be by its very nature of pure absoluteness, void of all connection with this world of apparent manifestation. So when you feel yourself to be void of all connection with the world, you can use the word transcendent. You have transcended the world. You have gone outside it. The world is, you are not part of the world anymore. Okay? So that's what he's saying. Very nature of pure, void of all connection with this world of apparent manifestation. Incapable of any supporting cognition or dynamic maintenance of it that gives it a reality. In other words, your body-mind life has no reality at all because you have no connection with it, nor can you do anything with it. You can't control it in any way. Neither supporting cognition, not even in knowledge and not even in action. Dynamic maintenance is action. Okay? So, of that, of it that gives it a reality. Or if there is such a cognition, it must be of the nature of a is that is not a magical Maya. Often is that is not a magical Maya. Okay, so I'll read that correctly again. Okay, it must be, if there is at all knowledge. Okay, so he's talking of that. It must be of the nature of a is. That means it is real, the world, but it is not. Okay? Of an is that is not a magical Maya. In other words, half real. This can also be seen. Sri Aurobindo saw in Baroda when he had the silent mind experience, he saw it is half real. He uses the word silhouette. Okay? In his Nirvana poem. The world becomes only silhouettes, only forms. No content at all, just outlines. So, half real. Okay? So, I read the next sentence. But there is no binding reason to suppose that this chasm must exist. He's saying that there is disconnection between the self and the physical world. It is not absolutely essential. Why? Because you remember in chapter 2 or 3 only, he says that when you go to the silent mind, 3 things are possible. Remember that, very important. It's just one small phrase, but it's very important. Either you see the physical world as unreal and reject it, or you are in the cosmic consciousness and you embrace the world and don't reject it. It is real. Okay? If you are in the cosmic consciousness, the world is absolutely real. But if you are in the consciousness of the self, it can be absolutely unreal, the world, or it can also be half real. Half real is Shankaran philosophy. Okay? Absolutely unreal, Buddhistic philosophy. Okay? But Sarabhai is saying, there is no binding reason to suppose that this chasm must exist. In other words, that's not the last experience. You can have an experience where the connection is there. That's what Sarabhai mentioned. What our relative human consciousness is or is not capable of is no test or standard of an absolute capacity. In other words, when you have an experience, it doesn't mean that that's the last experience. There can be other experiences also. Okay? What is necessary for our mental ignorance in order to escape from itself cannot be the necessity of the absolute, which has no need of self-escape or no reason for refusing to cognize whatever is to it cognizable. In other words, you can have an experience where the world is not unreal. Okay? So, I'm going into detail because the language sometimes is a little difficult. But if you have the basic idea, which you get from other passages, then the language becomes easy. But the language is always, the language is very complex, it is very global, is the word I can use. Very inclusive. It goes into very detail to include all. So it becomes very, very true, but it becomes difficult to understand also. Okay, so now we can go to the next para. There is that unmanifest unknowable. So we have 10 minutes. No, we have 15 minutes. We can read the next one. So who will read? Normally we ask Archana to read. If she has got the text, she can read. Or Kiran can also read if she wants. I think Kajan is not there. Kiran, you can read.
Okay, Rangaji.
Go ahead. There is that unmanifest.
There is that unmanifest unknowable. There is this manifest knowable. Partly manifest to our ignorance, manifest entirely to the divine knowledge which holds it in its own infinity. If it is true that neither our ignorance nor our utmost and widest mental knowledge can give us a hold of the unknowable, still it is also true that whether through our knowledge or through our ignorance, that variously manifests itself, for it cannot be manifesting something other than itself, since nothing else can exist. In this variety of manifestation, there is that oneness, and through the diversity, we can touch the oneness. But even so, even accepting this coexistence, it is still possible to pass a final verdict and sentence of condemnation on the becoming and decide on the necessity of renunciation of it and a return into the absolute being. This verdict can be based on the distinction between the real reality of the absolute
Yeah, real reality of the
and the
absolute.
partial and misleading reality of the relative universe.
Yeah. Okay. So last sentence is very interesting. This verdict can be based on the distinction between the real reality of the absolute and the partial and misleading reality of the relative universe. In other words, there's a gradation. And that gradation is so interesting that the world can be absolutely unreal or the world can be semi-real and it can also be absolutely real. All these are possible. So if you are in the semi-real, you can still say that I don't want the physical world. If there is suffering in it, there is limitation. Why should I opt for limitation? That's what he's saying in the last book. Okay? So I can do one thing. I'll read out the summary. Okay, because it's my words and it's easier to understand those words than just those words. Then we will read the paragraph. Okay, so he is now saying in this paragraph, we have then the unmanifest unknowable. Okay, so it is the absolute, the reality, okay, itself. We also have the manifest universe, which is partially knowable to our ignorant mind, but it is also fully known to the spirit. Okay. The spirit knows it fully, but to our mind, when we are at level 1, we can partially know it. Okay, all science is finding only truths of the material world. Okay, because the spirit contains the universe fully within itself. Spirit can understand fully, and if you go to the spirit, then we'll understand fully. But if you are in the physical world, you will understand partially. Very clear statement. This spirit oneness may not be fully knowable to our human ignorance or human knowledge. God is not very easily understandable by the human mind. That's what he's saying. Okay? But that oneness does manifest itself into multiplicity, which is nothing but itself. Okay? He himself has decided to become the many. Okay? It's like the one seed, okay, that creates a mango tree, and the mango tree has got 100,000 mangoes on it. Not 100,000, but hundreds of mangoes. Okay? So the one becoming the many. Okay? Which is nothing but itself. Because nothing but spirit exists. Advaita philosophy. And through this multiplicity, we can touch and sense that oneness. So even in the physical world, if not in the physical world, in the level 2, you can have an experience of the oneness. Maybe partly you can only touch and sense. There is a unity of everything you can experience in level 2. Although the integral view asserts the equal validity of both, now he's talking about his own theory. Okay, integral view asserts the equal validity of both, the one and the many, spirit and matter, okay, the self and nature, Purusha and Prakriti. I'm using all different words to accommodate and to make you understand the views of words. Okay, so equal validities. Philosophy says both are real, the one and the many. Yet it is quite legitimate to want only the one, the knowledge, the light, and reject the many, the ignorance, the darkness, by renunciation and merging fully into the unity of spirit. That's more than likely and more than understandable, says this saying. If I have a choice between light and semi-light, even if I see the world as real, semi-light, why should I choose semi-light? I want light. So it's very legitimate saying to want to get away from the physical world. That's the first tendency. Okay. It's quite legitimate to want only the one, the knowledge, the light, and reject the many, the ignorance, the darkness, by renunciation and merging fully into the unity of spirit. This rejection of the multiplicity is based on the relative reality of the universe, based on time and space, mutability, limitation, in contrast to the absolute reality of the timeless eternity, spaceless eternity, complete perfection of the immutable. This is what he said. It's very understandable that people want to reject the physical world. It's not ununderstandable. Although Srivamsa wants you to come back and not give it up, he will explain why afterwards. Okay? So, we've got still 9 minutes we've got left, so we can read the next one. I think it's clear, no? First, he has told you there are two theories. First one is the only spirit is real and matter is unreal. The second one, the both are real. You don't need to reject them. Now he's saying that even if both are real, still you want to go only to the one. You want to go to the light. That is understandable. Okay? Now we go to the next one. So we have got 9 minutes. We can read the next one. For we have in this unfolding of knowledge.
Should I read?
Yeah, go ahead, Suki.
For we have in this unfolding of knowledge the two terms of the one and the many, as we have the two terms of the finite and the infinite, of that which becomes and of that which does not become but forever is, of that which takes forms and of that which does not take form, of spirit and matter, of the supreme superconscious and the nethermost inconscious. In this dualism, and to get away from it, it is open to us to define knowledge as the possession of one term and the possession of the other as ignorance. The ultimate of our life will then be drawn away from the lower reality of the becoming to the greater reality of the being. A leap from the ignorance to the knowledge and a rejection of the ignorance, a departure from the many into the one, from the finite into the infinite, from form into the formless, from the life of the material universe into the spirit, from the hold of the inconscient upon us into the superconscient existence. In this solution, there is supposed to be a fixed opposition on ultimate irreconcilability. In this case, between two terms of our being, or else, if both are a means of the manifestation of the Brahman, the lower is a false or imperfect clue, a means that must fail, a system of values that cannot ultimately satisfy us. Dissatisfied with the confusion of the multiplicity, disdainful of even the highest light and power and joy that it can reveal, we must drive beyond to the absolute one-pointedness and one-standingness in which all self-variation ceases. Unable by the claim of the infinite upon us to dwell forever in the bonds of the finite, or to find there satisfaction and largeness and peace, we have to break all the bonds of individual and universal nature, destroy all values, symbols, images, self-definitions, limitations of the illimitable, and lose all littleness and division in the self that is forever satisfied with its own infinity. Disgusted with the forms, disillusioned of their false and transient attractions, wearied and discouraged by their fleeting impermanence and vain round of recurrence. We must escape from the cycles of nature into the formlessness and featurelessness of the permanent being. Ashamed of matter and its grossness, impatient of the purposeless stare and trouble of life, tired out by the goalless running of mind, or convinced of the vanity of all its aims and objects, we have to release ourselves into the eternal repose and purity of the spirit. The inconscience is a sleep or a prison, the conscient around of striving without ultimate issue, or the wandering of a dream. We must awake into the superconscious, where all darkness of night and half light cease in the self-luminous bliss of the eternal. The eternal is our refuge. All the rest are false values, the ignorance and its mazes, a self-bewilderment of the soul in phenomenal nature.
This whole para is not Sri-Aurobindo way of looking at things. He is describing the reason why people want to go only to the spirit and not to the world. Okay? He is explaining, and he's saying it is understandable. That's basically what he's saying. So it's quite long, and we're not going to go through the whole thing. So I'll just read out the summary to get the basic idea of what he's saying. Okay, so I'm reading out the summary so that we know what he's talking about. In the upward evolution of consciousness, we have dualities. Okay, there are one and the many, infinite and the finite. Okay, perfect permanence and imperfect transience. Perfect permanence at the top, permanent, immutable, and imperfect transience. Transience is going on because the form is changing. Static being on top, dynamic becoming at the bottom. Okay, stability at the top and movement at the bottom. Infinite and formless at the top, finite forms at the bottom. Spirit at the highest level, matter at the lower level, superconscious at the highest level, inconscience at the lower level, and knowledge and ignorance. Knowledge at the higher level, ignorance at the lower level. Purposely stressing all these things to make you understand it is very, very natural to want the upper and not the lower. Okay, that's what Sridhar is saying. Before he goes into his own philosophy, he says that no, we must also accept the lower. He is giving you the reason why most people want to go only to the top. Okay, so then he is saying man has a right to choose between these two options and define the one as a knowledge and the other as the ignorance. You can decide to do so. Okay? You have the full right to do that. If man so views this dichotomy, this difference, this gulf between, he has the right to choose the knowledge and reject the ignorance. Okay? There's nothing wrong in it. The ideal of life then becomes a need to escape from the finite becoming and enter into the infinite static being. In this solution, man views the dichotomy as irreconcilable. Buddhistic solution as well as Mayavada solution. It is irreconcilable. The two are opposites. They can never be combined. But even if both are created by the Brahman, the lower hemisphere is seen as false, imperfect, and limited, where soul satisfaction is impossible. In the physical world, you can never get soul satisfaction. He has therefore to reject the ignorance and disdainfully escape from forms and impermanence and merge into the knowledge of the one. Then he's saying this is the only way if he looks at the physical world as unreal. Matter is regarded as a dark prison from which man has to necessarily escape if soul satisfaction is the aim. Okay. The upper hemisphere, that is spirit, okay, the upper hemisphere of the eternal is the goal. refuge and ultimate resting place of the human soul. This is what Sindhu is saying in this paragraph. So it's very understandable why the ascetic and all, why the many yogas want to go to the higher level and not to the lower level. This is what he's saying. So we'll redo this one next time to understand his words. But this whole para is not his view. He is giving the view of the others and saying it is to a certain extent understandable. Okay, he may not agree, but he says, I can understand. Because that is light and this is darkness. That is infinite, this is finite. That is full ananda, this is death and suffering. So why should I go here? I want to go there. Okay? That's what he said. So we stop here today and we will make a note. We will redo this para. For we have in this unmanifold. Page 665.
Yes, I will.
Page 665.
Mhm.
Or we have it unfolding. We'll redo it. Okay?
Yes, I will make a note of that.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay.
Thank you.